They thought killing one man would break us. ... They thought burning him alive before the whole galaxy would make humanity kneel. They forgot who we are. ... We do not bow, do not forgive. And when the smoke clears, ... the galaxy will wish they had never lit that fire. Becca's Watwistered work-walked Galactic Council Hall was the heart of the galaxy's politics. It's a place where great empires decided the fate of entire worlds. Its walls curved high like the inside of a colossal starship glowing with cold blue light from alien symbols carved into the metal. Round the edge, hundreds of seats rose in a wide circle, each one holding the leader of a different alien race. Some were tall and thin with skin like glass. Others were covered in scales that shone under the light. Many had eyes that moved like liquid or mouths filled with sharp, glistening teeth. It was a place of cold judgment, a place where voices echoed for hours before decisions were made. But today, there would be no debate. It's only fire. In the very center of the hall stood a thick wooden stake, dark and rough, as if it had been ripped from some primitive world. Bound tightly to it with steel chains was a man broad-shouldered, muscular, his skin bruised from days of captivity. His name was Elias Grant, a human diplomat sent to speak for Earth. His mission had been simple: prevent war. But now, instead of speaking in the language of peace, he stood barefoot on dry kindling, surrounded by a silent circle of alien leaders. The air smelled faintly of oil. Somewhere far above, a vent released a slow hiss of steam. No human had ever been punished in this hall before. Many species had committed crimes and faced trials here, but never had the Council chosen such an ancient, brutal method of execution. Ilias's eyes swept the crowd. Some aliens watched with cold interest, others with cruel smiles. A few lowered their gaze, shame or fear hidden in their faces. He could hear the faint hum of translation devices whispering his death sentence in dozens of languages. In the front row, a tall insectoid creature with a gold crest stood and spoke in a clicking voice that echoed in the chamber. "Humanity has broken the laws of the stars," the translator said. "For your crimes against the galaxy, you will burn." The words rang like a bell, final and merciless. Ilias's jaw tightened. He was exhausted, thirsty, and wounded, but he stood tall, his eyes fixed on the one thing he could still give his people: defiance. His voice, hoarse but steady, cut through the hall. "You think this will scare us? You think burning one man will make Earth kneel?" His gaze swept over the alien faces. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." No one answered. No one moved. The silence was more dangerous than shouting. Somewhere behind him, a small torch was lit. The flame flickered in the cold air, its light trembling across the polished metal floor. It was passed from one alien guard to another until it reached the one standing at the base of the stake. The guard lowered it to the pile of kindling. The dry wood caught instantly, the flames spreading fast, orange light clashing with the cold blue glow of the chamber. The heat rose in waves, and smoke began to climb toward the high ceiling. Every screen across the galaxy was broadcasting this moment. From the streets of Earth to the mining colonies on Titan, from the orbital stations over Mars to the deep space freighters near the rim, billions watched in shock. Mothers held their children close. Soldiers clenched their fists. Old veterans stared silently, their jaws set like stone. The firelight danced on Elias's face, and his voice rose again, stronger than before. "Tell Earth, we never bowed." The flames climbed higher, curling around his legs, licking at the chains. The heat became unbearable, but Elias didn't scream. Not yet. The alien leaders leaned forward, some hungry for the sound, others unwilling to watch. The reptilian delegate turned away, muttering to another in their own tongue. Somewhere, a camera. Drones zoomed closer, the image of Elias's face filling screens across human space. His eyes blazed brighter than the fire itself. On Earth, in a secure underground war room, the president stood frozen before the massive display wall. The entire cabinet and high command were present, but no one spoke. The only sound was the roar of the fire coming from the speakers. Then Elias's voice, faint but still defiant: "We will remember." And then the fire roared louder, swallowing his words. A A moment later, his head fell forward. The image cut to the council's seal. Silence in the war room was broken by Admiral Hayes's voice, deep and heavy with fury. They just declared war on the human race. The president didn't answer right away. Her eyes were fixed on the place where Elias had stood. Slowly, she turned toward her military commanders. "They have made the worst mistake in history," she said. "Prepare the fleets." In the colonies, anger spread like wildfire. Workers in the asteroid mines stopped their drills and watched the replay in grim silence. Marines aboard distant patrol ships swore vengeance. Families placed candles in their windows, not just for Elias, but for the war they knew was coming. On Luna Station, a group of fighter pilots gathered in the hangar, their helmets in hand. One said simply, "Tell them we're coming." Back in the Galactic Council Hall, the flames died down, leaving only blackened wood and scorched chains. The alien leaders began to leave, their robes sweeping across the floor. But in the shadows, one figure remained, a tall alien with silver eyes. Virilin, a delegate from a neutral world, watched the smoldering remains of the man the council had just destroyed. She had felt the wrongness in this act from the beginning. As the smoke curled toward the ceiling, she whispered to herself in a language no human knew, "You have woken something you cannot control." Somewhere in the depths of space, far from the polished floors of the council hall, engines roared. To life, across the solar system, lights blazed in the shipyards. Humanity was no longer speaking the language of peace. Now they would speak in the language of war. The broadcast did not end in the council hall. It spread like a living thing. It's carried through the galaxy by waves of light and data, leaping from relay station to relay station. It poured into every human colony, every starship, every city on Earth. It played in the open plazas of Martian settlements, in the dark corridors of mining stations around Saturn, in the warm kitchens of families living under the domes of Europa. No one escaped it. No one could turn away. The image of Elias Grant, chained and burning, was now burned into the eyes of an entire species. On Earth, the streets fell silent. Traffic slowed to a crawl. Shopkeepers stood in their doorways, staring at the massive holoscreens mounted above. City squares, Elise's last words tell Earth. We never bowed goad over the sound systems, played again and again by news channels desperate to fill the stunned silence. In the great glass towers of New York, workers abandoned their desks to crowd around the big conference room displays. In the deserts of Australia, soldiers on training grounds froze mid-drill, their eyes fixed on portable monitors. It did not matter if they had known his name before this moment. Now, every human knew who Elias Grant was in the underground war. Command center beneath Washington, D.C., the air was thick with the smell of coffee and cold metal. Generals, admirals, intelligence chiefs, they all sat at the long, black table facing the giant display wall. The broadcast played in perfect resolution. Every flame, every flicker of light reflected in their grim eyes. The president stood at the head of the table, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles turned white. The room was silent, except for the crackle of the fire coming from the speakers. She did not blink. She did not move. When the screen finally faded to the seal of the Galactic Council, she turned to Admiral Hayes. "Tell me," she said, her voice low but sharp, "what options are on the table?" Hayes leaned forward, his voice steady but charged with fury. "We have the fleets. We have the weapons. We have the people. If they want war, Madam President, we will give them one they will never forget." Around the table, heads nodded slowly. There was no hesitation now. The last pieces of doubt had been burned away with Elias. The president straightened, her voice rising. "Then we begin Operation Iron Sky. Call back every ship. Activate all black projects. They lit a fire today, and we are going to burn them back. Far beyond Earth, in the cold steel corridors of the UHS Titan. A heavy cruiser patrolling near Neptune. The crew gathered in the mess hall. They watched the broadcast in silence, their faces lit by the holoprojector's cold blue glow. The video ended. No one spoke for several long seconds. Then the ship's captain, a man with deep scars running across his jaw, stood up. "You all saw it. You all know what this means. We are going home. We are going to war. The room erupted into a roar of approval, the sound echoing through the ship's decks. In the great shipyards orbiting Jupiter, the news hit like a thunderclap. Workers already tired from double shifts threw themselves into triple shifts without hesitation. Welding torches lit up the blackness of space, sparks flashing like small stars against the darkness. Massive warship hulls floated in dry dock, some already painted in the deep blues and grays of the United Human Fleet. Engineers pulled dusty blueprints from locked vaults, designs for weapons, so powerful they had been kept hidden from the galaxy. Railguns the size of city blocks. Stealth cruisers coated in light-bending armor. Orbital cannons capable of burning a warship to ash with a single shot. Now, nothing was off-limits. On Mars, in the sprawling military base carved deep into the red rock, the soldiers gathered in the training grounds. The broadcast was projected on the massive wall of the canyon itself. They watched Ilias's execution in total silence, their helmets under their arms, the cold Martian wind cutting across their faces. When the video ended, a voice came from the back of the crowd, a deep, angry shout that rolled across the canyon. For Elias. 100 voices answered at once, then 1,000. The cry echoed until it was no longer words but a roar, a sound that could have come from the throat of a single living creature made up of every soldier standing there, even in the farthest colonies. The response was the same. Mining stations. Drifting beyond Pluto's orbit, the workers slammed their fists against the walls in unison. On orbital farms circling Venus, entire crews stopped work to gather around small screens, their hands gripping one another's shoulders. Humanity had been many things in the galaxy. Explorers, traders, fighters, settlers, but now, at this moment, they were one thing above all else united. The Galactic Council had expected fear. They had expected chaos, maybe even surrender. Instead, they had given the human race a single, undeniable reason to fight. And once humans had a reason, there was no going back. In a dark corner of the galaxy, on a neutral station that traded with both humans and alien races, Verilyn sat in her private quarters. The silver-eyed alien delegate replayed the execution again and again on her personal console. She had been there in the hall. She had seen the fire. She had seen the council's faces, cold and certain, believing they had done the right thing. But Verilyn knew what they had actually done. They had declared war not on a fleet, not on a planet, not even on a government, but on the very soul of humanity. She knew enough of human history to understand what that meant. As the broadcast ended for the last time, she leaned back in her chair and whispered into the dim light, "They have no idea what's coming for them." The Galactic Council Hall, so full of fire and noise only a day before, now sat in cold silence. The charred stake at its center had been removed, leaving only a dark circle burned into the polished metal floor. But the memory of the flames still clung to the air, and the smell of smoke still drifted through the high chambers. Delegates moved through the great room in small clusters, their voices low, their eyes darting. The public execution of Elias Grant had been meant to unite the Council in its judgment against humanity. Instead, it had split them apart. In the upper tiers, alien representatives gathered in private alcoves, speaking in their own languages, their tones sharp and uneasy. Some were furious not at the humans, but at the decision to burn their envoy alive. To them, it was a reckless act, an open invitation for disaster. Others, especially those from the old, powerful empires, defended the execution with pride, insisting it was justice. A few simply avoided the discussion altogether, their silence a shield against choosing a side at the central table. High Speaker Koroth, a tall reptilian with deep green scales, called for order. His voice carried. Across the hall, strong but tense, "We have done what was necessary. Humanity was warned. They ignored our warnings. The execution was justice under the laws of the stars." His long, narrow eyes swept the chamber. Daring anyone to challenge him, they did. Delegate Shireel, a pale feathered being from the water world of Nivra, rose to her full height, feathers trembling with anger. "Justice," she said, her voice soft but cutting. You call it justice to burn a living envoy before the galaxy? You have not ended their defiance, you have ignited it? Korth's eyes narrowed. They were already a threat. Oh, they are an example. Across the chamber, a deep voice rumbled. No, said General Varrock of the Tar Dominion, his 4 massive arms folded across his chest. Now they are an enemy who will stop at nothing. I have fought alongside humans before. I have seen how they fight when one of their own is taken. His gaze hardened. You have brought war to our door. A wave of murmurs rippled through the chamber. The truth was, not everyone in the council had been told about the humans' growing fleet, their hidden weapons, or their history of fierce resistance. For centuries, humanity had been considered a young and ambitious species, not yet a true power. But the few who had fought them in border disputes, or who had traded with them in distant colonies, knew the truth: humans were not like most species. They did not accept defeat, learned, adapted, and came back stronger. In the shadows of the hall, away from the loudest voices, Verilyn watched quietly. She had not spoken during the execution, nor in the hours since, but she listened. To every word, every threat, every uneasy whisper. Her silver eyes flicked toward the exits, noting which delegates left quickly and which lingered to whisper in corners. Patterns were forming, factions were taking shape. Later, in a private meeting, rooms sealed by heavy soundproof doors, a smaller group of delegates gathered. Shuriel was there, along with Varric and several others from neutral or trade-focused worlds. The atmosphere was tense. Varric broke the silence. We must prepare for what is coming. The humans will not forgive this. If they rise to war, they will not fight alone. One of the delegates scoffed. You think humans can rally allies? Would join them against the council? Verilyn finally spoke, her voice calm but cold. Those who have debts to settle with the council. Those who fear its power more than they fear humans. And those who simply wish to see the old powers bleed. She leaned forward. Do not underestimate them. I have studied human history. They do not forget, they do not forgive. And when pushed, they unite in ways we do not. Shuriel nodded. But they have already begun. My sources tell me their fleets are moving, their shipyards alive with activity. Another delegate shifted uncomfortably. If that is true, then we must act quickly. Either to destroy them before they are ready, or to make peace. Varric grunted. Peace is no longer possible. The fire in the hall burned, more than a man, it burned every bridge we might have crossed. As the discussion continued elsewhere in the hall, the hardline faction plotted their own moves. Koroth met with his supporters in a chamber lined with ancient banners of past council victories. We will crush them, he said, his voice dripping with certainty. They may have ships, they may have weapons, but they do not have the numbers. We will strike fast, and we will strike hard. They will be wiped from the stars before they can draw their first battle line. One of his aides hesitated. And if we fail, Korth's lip curled in something that might have been a smile. We will not fail, but the truth was less certain. Even now, intelligence reports buried in secure council archives spoke of human stealth fleets, experimental weapons, and military mobilization on a scale not seen in decades. Some within the council had read these reports and ignored them. Others had never been given access. A few, like Verilyn, had memorized every line by the time the council adjourned. Nothing had been truly decided. The factions had deepened. The old alliances had begun to crack. The burning of Elias Grant had not united the galaxy it had. Fractured it, and far away, on the edges of human space, the first wave of warships was already moving into position. The news of Elias Grant's death had spread like fire through the veins of humanity. Now that fire was being forged into steel. From the high orbit of Earth to the cold black edges of the solar system, the human war machine began to wake. It did not wake quietly. It woke with the roar of engines, the flash of welding torches, the sharp bark of orders echoing through shipyards the size of cities, in the shadow of Jupiter storms. The Atlas shipyard blazed with light against the darkness of space. Massive construction arms swung slowly, moving hull plates into position. Sparks poured like waterfalls as teams of engineers welded armor thicker than anything the Council fleets had ever faced. Warships the size of skyscrapers floated in dry dock, their hulls painted in the cold grays and deep blues of the United Human Fleet. Some were new, their designs secret until this day. Others were refitted veterans of past battles brought out of retirement for one last war. Inside the command decks, admirals studied tactical projections on glowing tables. Every ship in the fleet was being recalled. Freighters were stripped of cargo bays and rebuilt into troop carriers. Old orbital defense platforms, once left to rust in the dark, were being rearmed with missile batteries and railguns. Civilians worked side by side with soldiers. Mechanics who had once repaired mining drills now stood inside the bellies of battle cruisers, fitting new reactor cores. Farmers from Mars volunteered to run supply lines.
Wow.
On every screen and every banner, one name kept appearing: Elias Grant. He had become more than a diplomat. He was now the symbol of the war to come. Mars itself had become a furnace of war. In the massive forge complexes under Olympus Mons, factories ran day and night without pause. Conveyor belts carried the parts of weapons so powerful they had been locked away for decades. Railgun barrels long enough to pierce a warship at light-second range. Missile warheads that could split apart into hundreds of guided fragments. Stealth plating that bent light and radar around entire fleets. The Red Planet's skies were alive with the rise and fall of cargo shuttles, moving weapons to orbit faster than any schedule could track. On the icy moon of Europa, in hidden hangars carved, beneath the surface, the Shadow Wing squadrons assembled. These were not ordinary fighters. They were sleek black ships with curved hulls coated in a material that swallowed light. They moved without sound, without reflection, designed to pass through enemy lines unseen until it was too late. Each pilot wore a visor linked directly to their fighter's targeting system, their thoughts guiding the ship faster than any hands could. They had been training in silence for years, waiting for a mission worthy of their existence. Now their time had come. Farther out, near the rings of Saturn, the Helios array awoke from decades of dormancy. To most, it had been nothing more than a research installation. In truth, it was humanity's most dangerous weapon network of orbital cannons powered by the sun itself. When fired, each beam could cut a capital ship in half with a single shot. Its existence had been a closely guarded secret, known only to the highest levels of command. Now, its great lenses turned toward the outer systems, charging in slow, steady pulses. The call to arms reached even the smallest outposts. On Pluto's icy plains, miners packed up their tools and boarded transports, their breath freezing in the thin air as they left behind the quiet life for the front lines. On Venus's cloud stations, workers abandoned the hydro farms and joined the fleet's logistics crews. No one had to be ordered. The execution of Elias Grant had burned itself into every mind, and each person found their own way to fight back. In the great war room beneath Washington, D.C., the heart of the command network pulsed with activity. Giant screens tracked the movement of every ship in human space. Blue lines showed friendly fleets converging on rally points. Red icons marked council outposts and patrol routes. Admiral Hayes stood at the center, his eyes scanning the board. Within 72 hours, he said to the gathered officers, "The first wave will be ready to strike. We won't wait for them to come to us. We'll take the fight to their door." The president watched silently, her hands clasped behind her back. Her voice was calm when she finally spoke, but it carried the weight of history. "We are not fighting for land. We're not fighting for resources. We're fighting for the right to exist without bending the knee. Every soldier, every worker, every citizen must understand that." She paused, her eyes fixed on the great map of the galaxy. "If they want to test humanity's will, then we will show them what it means." At the same moment, across the solar system, the fleets began to move. In the darkness beyond Neptune, the Titan and her sister ships formed up in battle formation. Around Earth, carrier groups launched their fighters into tight swarms, ready for deep space combat. Near Mars, troop transports fell into line behind armored escorts, their holds filled with soldiers in gleaming battle armor. The Shadow Wing disappeared into the black, their stealth systems swallowing every trace of their passage. From the smallest drone to the largest dreadnought, every machine had one purpose now, to strike back, and far away, on her private ship drifting in the neutral zones. Verilyn received encrypted reports from her human contact. She read them in silence, her silver eyes narrowing. The humans were moving faster than even she had expected. They were not reacting with fear or confusion. They were preparing with precision and rage. She closed the file and spoke softly to herself. The Council has no idea what is coming. The orders came through the fleet channels in the deep hours of the solar night. Short, precise, unmistakable. Operation Iron Sky Phase 1. Target: Council Outpost Delta 7. All units engage. The words flashed across encrypted displays. In warships from Earth to the dark edges of Neptune's orbit, there was no speech, no rallying cry, no drawn-out countdown. Humanity had decided to speak now in a language the Council would understand: swift, sudden, and merciless. In the darkness, beyond Pluto, the UHS Titan led the first strike group. Her hull, plated in new armor that shimmered faintly under starlight, cut through space like a blade. Around her, destroyers and frigates formed a tight spearhead formation. Behind them, two massive carriers drifted silently, their bays filled with fighters waiting for the order to launch. Every light aboard the ships had been dimmed to blood red. The crews moved in silence, their voices low, their movements steady. They had rehearsed this 100 times in simulations. But now, it was real. The target Council outpost, Delta 7, was a station built into the side of a cold, dead moon orbiting a gas giant in neutral space. Officially, it was a logistics hub for trade convoys. In truth, it was a forward military base, a staging ground for Council patrols into human sectors. Its defenses were strong, heavy railguns, missile arrays, shield projectors, but its commanders believed they were safe. After all, the Council had never faced a human attack this far from their borders. That belief would die before the hour was over, as the strike group closed in. The Titan's bridge was lit only by the faint glow of tactical holograms. Admiral Hayes stood behind the command chair, his hands resting on the railing. His eyes were fixed on the wireframe image of the outpost, slowly rotating in midair. "Stealth field holding, aye, sir," came the reply. "No scans on us yet, we're ghosts." "Good," Hayes said. Out. His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was steel. "Launch the wing." The carrier bays opened with a hiss of vacuum. One by one, black fighters slipped out, their stealth plating swallowing the light of distant stars. They fanned into attack formation, their engines whisper quiet. In the cockpit of Shadow Wing leader Callan Voss, the targeting display painted the station in red outlines. He could see the patrol routes of Council fighters slow and lazy there, pilots unaware of the storm about to break. The first shot came from the Shadowza. Railgun slug fired from the Titan at a velocity so high it arrived before the outpost's sensors even registered the attack. It struck one of the station's shield generators dead center, the impact tearing through the armor and sending molten fragments spinning into space. An instant later, the fighter screamed out of stealth and dove on the outpost from every direction. Missiles flared white-hot, cutting through the dark. Railguns thundered in deep, shattering booms that echoed through the hulls of human ships. The Council's defense systems woke too late. Automated turrets began to fire, but their targeting struggled to lock on to the flickering shapes of stealth, fighters darting between them. The outer hull of the station rippled with explosions as fuel lines ignited and air vented into the void. Inside Delta 7, alarms wailed. Council officers shouted orders in half a dozen alien languages. There, voices overlapping in chaos. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as compartments lost pressure. A squad of insectoid soldiers charged toward the docking bays. But before they could reach the airlocks, a breaching charge blew the doors inward. Human Marines in black combat armor poured through the breach, rifles raised. The fight was quick, brutal, and one dash-sided from his command station. Admiral Hayes watched the tactical board as red icons winked out one after another. Status, he asked. Shields down. Main defense grid offline. Enemy comes disrupted. Hayes nodded slowly. Finish it. The Titan's main batteries turned toward the heart of the station. A moment later, 3 railgun slugs, each the size of a city bus, slammed into the central reactor. The explosion lit the moon's surface for thousands of kilometers, a silent bloom of white and orange fire in the void. When the light faded, nothing remained of Delta 7 but twisted debris and the drifting bodies of its defenders. The human fleet did not linger. With the same precision they had arrived, they turned and vanished into the black. Not a single human ship had been lost. Back on Earth, the war room watched the live feed in silence. When the explosion lit up the screens, no one spoke for a long moment. Then the president turned to her generals. Message to the council, she said. 5 words. Send it on every channel. She recited them slowly, each one sharp as a blade. You burned one of ours. Across the galaxy, in the chambers of the Galactic Council, the message arrived. It repeated endlessly, flashing on every terminal, every display, every communication link they had. Delegates stared at it in disbelief. Some in anger, some in fear. A few, remembering the fire in the hall, began to realize that humanity's answer had just begun, and far from any planet, in the quiet dark between the stars, Verilyn received the news. She closed her eyes, picturing the council leaders' faces when they saw what had been done. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a small, sharp smile. They've struck the first blow, she whispered, and it will not be the last. The destruction of Delta 7 did not fade quietly into the void. It rippled like a shockwave through the star lanes, across the council's communication grids, and into the high vaulted chamber where the alien rulers met. No one could ignore it. The humans had done what no other species dared. They had crossed into council space and struck a fortified military installation without warning. And won. The council chamber was in chaos. Dozens of alien delegates argued, their voices clashing like metal on metal. Some demanded an immediate military retaliation. Others called for caution, fearing the humans had more surprises hidden in the dark. But the High Chancellor silenced them with a single, sharp word. His insectoid mandibles clicked as he leaned forward. We will answer, and our answer will be fire. Orders rippled outward from the Council's command worlds, carried on encrypted. Pulses across the hyperlanes. Entire fleets were mobilized, warships pulled from patrol routes, defense stations stripped of garrisons. From the gas giant shipyards of Corval to the icy rings of Vestra Prime, the war machine of the Galactic Council began to move. The humans had struck one outpost. But now, the Council would strike at the heart of human space. 2 weeks. After Delta 7's destruction, the sky above the colony world of New Horizon turned black. At first, the colonists thought it was a storm cloud spreading unnaturally fast across the pale blue. But then the ground shook, and the clouds split apart to reveal the dark, sharp silhouettes of warships. Massive destroyers and cruisers blotted out the sun, their hulls marked with the sigils of 6 alien species. The first salvo came without warning. Orbital railguns lit the atmosphere with streaks of molten metal. Explosions tore through the colony's outskirts, flattening buildings and sending fire racing through the forests. Communication towers snapped like twigs. Emergency sirens wailed across the city as thousands scrambled for shelters, but the bombardment was relentless. In orbit, the defense fleet of New Horizon was already moving. The human destroyer UHS Resolute broke formation first, diving into the path of incoming enemy torpedoes to shield the colony's main orbital station. The blast ripped her hull open, venting fire and crew into space, but it gave the other human ships precious seconds to fire back. Commander Elena Drake, aboard the UHS Vanguard, watched her tactical display fill with hostile signatures. There's too many, her weapons officer muttered. We can't hold them all. Drake's voice was cold, steady. We don't need to hold them all. We just need to hold them long enough for the civilians to get underground. The battle that followed was chaos, a brutal knife fight in the shadow of the planet. Human ships darted between the larger alien vessels, targeting weak points, punching holes in shields, then vanishing into the glare of explosions. Alien cruisers unleashed swarms of attack drones, their black shapes weaving through the debris. To hunt human fighters, sky over New Horizon burned red and gold as wreckage fell, leaving trails of fire through the clouds. On the surface, ground forces landed in waves. Six-legged war machines thundered down the colony's streets, their energy cannons tearing through barricades. Human marines fought from rooftop to rooftop, laying down heavy fire, refusing to give up even as the alien troops advanced. But the Council had not come to occupy. They had come to send a message. In the colony's central plaza, alien soldiers forced hundreds of captured civilians to their knees. Holodrones recorded every moment, transmitting the images live to the galaxy. A council commander stepped forward, a tall, reptilian figure in silver battle armor, and raised his voice in a dozen tongues. "This is the price of human defiance," he declared. Then, before the Marines could break through, the executions began. In the war room on Earth, leaders watched in horror as the feed came through. The president's knuckles turned white around the edge of the table. "Cut that transmission," she ordered, but it was too late. The images had already spread, carried by smugglers, by encrypted military channels, by outraged citizens who swore they would never forgive what they had seen. Above New Horizon, the Vanguard was battered, bleeding fire from a dozen wounds. But, still fighting, Commander Drake's voice was raw as she shouted over the roar of alarms. "Target their command cruiser. If we can take it out." Maybe her sentence was cut short by a massive impact that sent her ship spinning. On the ground, reinforcements from nearby human sectors were hours away, hours the colony did not have. The Council fleet did not stay. They had no need. Once the plaza was littered with the bodies of the executed, once the colony's defenses lay in ruins, the alien ships broke orbit and vanished into hyperspace, leaving only smoke, fire, and silence in their wake. In the days that followed, every human news channel played the same footage, the burning skyline of New Horizon. The Council commander's words, the civilians falling one by one. Anger spread faster than fear. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Old ships in dry dock were overhauled and sent to the front, and in a dark hangar on Luna Base, Admiral Hayes stood before the crew of the UHS Titan. His voice carried through the steel and shadows. "They think this will break us. They think we'll bow. They think we'll beg for mercy." He paused, letting the silence tighten around every soldier present. "They've just given us a reason to make sure their worlds never know peace again." Far from Earth, in the Council's central world, the High Chancellor received the after-action report. The attack on New Horizon had been successful. But deep in his mind, a small, quiet thought began to whisper, thought he did not speak aloud. The humans would not forgive this. When they came again, it would not be for an outpost. The galaxy had gone silent. After the fall of Voroth, even the bravest Council worlds kept their fleets close to home, afraid of the shadow that now moved through the stars. They called it the human storm, a sudden, unstoppable force that could appear anywhere, crush anything, and then vanish before the enemy knew what had happened. But deep in the hidden war rooms of Earth's command, the storm was about to break one last time. The plan was dangerous, so dangerous that even some human generals hesitated to approve it. The target was the Council's beating heart, their capital world, Syraxis Prime. It was the most heavily defended planet in the known galaxy. A jewel of impossible cities and ancient power. Thousands of warships guarded its orbit. Its planetary shields could hold against sieges lasting decades. No one had ever gotten close enough to threaten it. But humanity wasn't going to siege it. Humanity was going to burn it, fastened. From the inside, Admiral Hayes stood before the War Council table, his hand resting on the glowing projection of Syraxis Prime. "We will not give them time to respond. We will not give them time to think. This will be one strike, one heartbeat, and it will be over. Once we are done here, the galaxy will never again doubt who we are." His voice was calm, but behind his eyes burned the memory of the diplomats. Execution. the smell of burning flesh in the council chamber. Silent vow he had made that day. The plan unfolded in brutal simplicity. 3 human fleets would approach the capital from different hyperspace vectors, drawing the defense ships away. The Titan would carry the real strike force, dozens of stealth ships hidden inside its cargo bays. Once the defenders engaged the decoy fleets, those hidden ships would launch straight at the planet's shield generators, planting charges that could bring them down in under a minute. Then, the capital would be open to fire. When the day came, the blackness of space around Syraxis Prime shimmered, and humanity arrived. On one side of the planet, Fleet Alpha emerged from hyperspace with guns blazing, hammering the defenders with torpedo waves. On the opposite side, Fleet Beta appeared, its destroyers scattering mines and missile barrages to force the enemy to split their forces. The Council reacted exactly as Hayes had predicted, moving their largest warships toward the 2 visible fleets. They never saw the Titan slip into low orbit on the planet's shadow side. In the silence of the shadow, the stealth ships launched. They were like daggers of black metal, invisible to radar, hugging the curve of the planet's atmosphere. Council's orbital cannons fired wildly at ghosts, missing every shot. Within minutes, the first charges were placed on the primary shield pylons. Explosions lit the sky like falling stars, and for the first time in 1,000 years, Syraxis Prime's shields flickered, then died. The next moment was chaos. Titan turned its guns on the capital's defense batteries, tearing them apart with precision strikes. Human bombers screamed down through the clouds, targeting the massive command towers that controlled the Council's fleets. Entire districts went dark as power grids collapsed. Fires rose from the surface, painting the planet in a hellish glow. On the bridge, Hayes watched as the capital's Grand Hall, where the Diplomat had been executed, came into view on the targeting display. He gave no speech, no order for mercy. Fire! The railguns of the Titan thundered, and the Grand Hall was ripped from its foundations in a single earth-shattering blast. The chamber where the Council had mocked and killed humanity's envoy was now nothing but dust swirling in the wind. But the battle was not over. The Council's remaining fleets, realizing the deception, raced back toward the planet. In the distance, the glow of their engines looked like a wall of fire closing in. Hayes knew they could not hold the capital for long. This strike was never about occupation. It was about ending the war in one message so clear, so brutal, that no one would dare challenge humanity again. Signal all ships, Hayes said. Phase 2. From orbit, humanity unleashed its final weapon, a network of kinetic rods dropped from space, each one a spear of tungsten traveling faster than sound. They tore through the planet's military districts, shattering weapons, factories, destroying fuel depots, and burying entire arsenals under molten rock. The Council's ability to fight was gone in a matter of minutes. In the aftermath, the human fleets pulled away, vanishing back into the deep black as the enemy's reinforcements arrived too late. Below, Syraxis Prime burned. Entire towers lay, collapsed, its proud defenses shattered. The High Chancellor survived, but his voice trembled as he spoke to the remaining Council members. If we strike back now, they will return. And next time, they will not leave anything standing. The war was over. Humanity had done the impossible. They had broken the galaxy's most powerful empire. The name of Earth was no longer whispered in contempt in alien halls. Now it was spoken with caution. And with fear, on the bridge of the Titan, Hayes stood alone, staring out at the shrinking glow of the capital world. He felt no joy, no victory, only the weight of what had been done. Humanity had won, but the galaxy had changed forever. Somewhere, in the darkness, he knew another enemy would rise one day, and when it did, the galaxy would remember the fire that humanity had lit, and what it had cost to burn so brightly. The smoldering ruins of New Horizon were still cooling when the order went out from Earth. There would be no diplomacy, no negotiations, no drawn-out council meetings. Humanity had been struck in the heart, and now it was time to strike back. With everything it had, across the solar system, shipyards lit up with activity. Engines were tested to the point of failure. New warships bigger, faster, heavier than anything the Council had seen rolled off the docks in rapid succession. The massive dreadnought UHS Titan became the flagship, its hull gleaming black like a predator in the void. Around it, fleets formed from every human sector. From Mars to the distant colonies beyond Pluto's orbit, Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching the holographic display of their targets. This would not be a single battle. This would be a chain of strikes designed to cripple the Council's war machine. "We're not taking their borders," Hayes said, his voice steady. "We're going straight for their bones. We'll rip out their fuel lines, shatter their command centers, and burn their shipyards to ash." The plan was bold, dangerously bold. Human fleets would jump deep into enemy territory, hitting worlds and stations that had never known war. Every strike would happen at the same time, coordinated to the second, so the Council could not respond in force to any single point. It was a gamble. But humanity had learned something from the Delta 7 battle. Shock and speed could turn weakness into power. The first target was the supply hub of Raxes Prime, hidden in a web of asteroid belts. It fed fuel and ammunition to half the Council's fleet. The Titan emerged from hyperspace right on top of it, guns blazing. Council ships scrambled from their docks, but the humans were already inside their defenses. Railgun rounds tore through station arms. Missile salvos exploded in perfect sequence, turning entire sections into burning debris. Within 20 minutes, Raxes Prime was nothing more than a scattering of molten metal tumbling through the void. At the same time, in a distant system, the destroyers, UHS Valor and UHS Nightstar, led a wolf pack of human corvettes against the orbital shipyards of Lorven. The yards were massive structures that built the Council's fastest cruisers, and they had never been attacked before. The first human torpedoes struck before the shipyard's shields were even fully charged. Entire half-built cruisers were split apart, their pieces drifting into the gas giant storms below. Workers fled in escape pods. The human fleet ignored them. This was about breaking the Council's weapons, not slaughtering civilians. By the time the third strike hit, this one against the communications hub of Kestra for the Council, finally realized what was happening. Messages poured into their War Council chambers, each more panicked than the last. Their fleets were scattered, reacting too slowly to defend what mattered most. But humanity wasn't finished. Admiral Hayes had saved the most daring strike for himself. The Titan, flanked by 2 full battle groups, set course for Varatha, a fortress world that guarded the approach to the Council's capital. Vorath had never fallen, its defenses layered over centuries, its orbital cannons capable of gutting a battleship in a single shot. The Council believed it untouchable. Hayes intended to prove them wrong. When the Titan arrived, the battle began. Instantly, cannon fire lit the void in brilliant flashes. The fortress's main guns roared, forcing the Titan to weave and dive like a predator dodging blows. Human bombers broke through the first shield line, dropping payloads that cracked the outer ring of defense towers. The planet's surface defenses returned fire, lancing beams into space. But every time a human ship fell, another surged forward to fill the gap. On the bridge, Hayes barked orders without pause. Focus all batteries on their southern defense. Grid. Break it, and their power relays will overload. Minutes later, a chain of explosions ripped across Varath's horizon, knocking out half its defenses in one strike. The humans didn't stop. Dropships screamed down through the atmosphere, delivering strike teams who planted charges in the fortress's shield generators. The ground shook as the last generator collapsed, and the Titan's main guns turned the fortress's proud spires into rubble. By the time the smoke cleared, Vorath was gone. Its proud walls were flattened, its banners burned. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had shattered one of the Council's greatest strongholds, and they had done it in a single day. Back on the Council's capital world, the High Chancellor stared at the reports in disbelief. The human attacks had been everywhere, fast, surgical, devastating. Supply lines were severed. Shipyards lay in ruin. The fortress of Vorath, their shield against invasion, was nothing but ash. And worst of all, the human fleets had pulled away before a counterattack could be organized. They had come, destroyed, and vanished into the dark, leaving the galaxy, to wonder where they would strike next, in the streets of human worlds. Victory celebrations erupted, but Hayes did not smile. He knew the Council would strike back, harder than ever. But he also knew something else, something that gave him quiet confidence. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they could not only fight, they could win. And somewhere deep in the silent, black beyond the Council's borders, the next phase of the plan was already in motion. The humans were preparing for the final blow, the one that would end the war on their terms.